I saw that, and I somebody else asked me about that recently, but I hadn't.
So we are live. What's going on, y'all? How you doing? Welcome to another Mahogany Books Book Club featuring Panama Jackson conversation. We are already heated in here today. Just want to let you guys know we are discussing the book Ride or Die, a Feminist Manifesto for the Well-Being of Black Women by one Shanita Hubbard. This is our March book that we read. We always have these conversations on the first Friday of the following month to meet here locally in Anacostia, and we stream live to YouTube and Facebook. So you guys are watching now, you can always comment, and we will definitely include you guys in the conversation, answer questions, share your thoughts and everything. And sometimes we have some lively conversations. And I think this one will be one of those conversations. I'll try not to get in trouble. I promise my wife about that. I will be good today. But yeah, so what I wanted to do to get us started is toss it to Panama, because this is a book that you selected for us to read this month, last month, and we're talking now. So I'm gonna let you get things started.
Yeah, listen. Number one, we already been hot in this joint, so I'm excited. I chose this book for a couple of reasons. Number one, Shanita is a friend of mine, right? I always hate when my friends give me mixtapes that suck. So I'm very happy when my friends give me mixtapes that don't suck. So I read the book. I'm always, and because I have so many friends that are in the writer space, I'm apprehensive about reading a lot of books. But I picked this book up. I read it. It started off slow for me. I'll be honest. It started off slow for me, and I put it down. Then I picked it back up, and it took off. Like the chapter, and it's not long, which is very exciting for me. It wasn't long. It's about hip hop and all these things. So when I finished, I was like, yo, I actually really enjoyed that. So I hit her up immediately. He's like, yo, homie, you did a good job. I just want you to know that, from one writer to another, I really enjoyed this book. I think you did a good job. You knocked it out the park. That's why I decided to add this to our list for a couple of reasons. One, it's got hip hop elements to it. It's an art. It's a writer I know, and I enjoyed it. So far be it for me to be surprised when, though, based on last month's conversation, what book did we read? What was that?
Razorblade Tears.
Razorblade Tears. We had some conversation.
Whatever
the conversation.
That didn't make sense for that book.
So what?
I feel like the conversation that we had, I was shocked that we
got
got there.
One part of that.
There was one part because of the book.
But I was trying to hold it back.
So anyway, last month, we got into some kind of like man hating type stuff, whatever, some conversation, and somebody had gotten their feelings about it a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna say no name, but his name is Derek. So when I started reading this again for this book, I was like, oh shit, Derek is not gonna enjoy this. And lo and behold, as soon as I walk in, first thing my man says to me, like, this man got me reading this damn book. Okay. So I'm excited already. But I will say, so I enjoyed this book because even though I do agree it's in the title. This shit is a feminist manifesto for the well-being of Black women. It's not a book meant for us necessarily, right? But when I'm reading it, I can appreciate the big thematic topics she tried to address and how she used very personal examples and how her own life she's had to make adjustments in her own life based on where she's from, based on attitudes, based on where she's been, about those big ideas in order to even write this book, right? There was a lot of learning that had to happen in her own life in order to write it. I can appreciate that. So, and I can appreciate that it's not just all about the things that men need to do. It's conversations about things that it's interpersonal between women, right? Like about dealing with communities within there, so it's like, it wasn't just about dealing with men and being a feminist and dealing with men. It was about like life in all these different ways that who you are intersects with other people's lives. So to that end, I thought it was really well done.
Yes. And if that's the end of the conversation, I think we're good there. I will say I 100% agree. This book is not intended for me, and I can appreciate that. It's not meant to center me, and I can appreciate that. But if you're asking me to read it, and in my head, as I'm going through this, I'm like, if someone's going to ask me my thoughts on it, how do I put that into words? Mm-hmm. Right? And that's where I come into trouble, because I want to be honest about it. I want to be able to try to find the good, and or if there's bad, I want to be able to speak to it without, and in the situation, the parts that I'm not happy about, be able to speak to it without erasing the people who the book was meant for, right? Because it's not, so who cares about my opinion? Like, I would be honest, happy, sitting back and not being a part of this conversation, switching spots with Brianna and let Brianna run it. Because whether I like it or not, it honestly doesn't matter, because it's not meant for me. So before I drop my bombs, I want to open it up for other folks to share your thoughts. I'm going to go to Brianna first, because I know some of what you were saying.
I was really excited. It was a quick read, and I felt like I appreciated it, because it did kind of feel like I was just reading a Black woman who appreciates hip-hop essays on how we fit in the misogyny of hip-hop. There were a lot of personal anecdotes.
Okay.
There were a lot of
clearly missed the cue, but
there were a lot of personal anecdotes, and I was like, yeah, I can see that. Or, oh, like, I've had a friend who's been in that situation before, so I appreciate that. In her introduction, I felt like she set it up to where I felt like I could meet her at a place where she was at. She said something early on about, like, she had always looked to Black women in her life. Like, she knew she could always count on Black women. And I'm like, dang, that's very, very true. I do appreciate that. But I got excited about this, and then I watched Rap Caviar on Hulu, which is a new show based on Spotify's playlist, Rap Caviar. And so they dive into hip-hop, and as you guys know, it's the 50-year anniversary of hip-hop, and it's like, what does hip-hop mean, and what does it look like now? And that includes a conversation on women. So the second episode is about the City Girls, and I was like, dang, this is like the perfect episode to go along with this book, because they're talking about raunchy things and trying to make their place in hip-hop, and it's like, how do you come at them and say this isn't real hip-hop, or say that you guys are spewing hateful messages, but then you guys are listening to like tip drill and other stuff like that that just focuses on men's ways of saying, oh, how do I put this correctly? Men's way of putting this content out, but then when women reverse it and put the content out in their own perspective, saying that you can't do that either. So I appreciated this book. I really, really liked it, and I'm not sure where Derek is coming from.
Patriarchy is a hell of a drug.
Okay, so going into the book, I felt like it was very strong. I felt like I was really like, yay. But then I think I got lost during the Lauryn Hill chapter. I love Lauryn Hill. I love that song. So I felt like I struggled with like, so we are like, we love WAP, but we're like, Lauryn Hill is like misogyny. And I felt like, so there wasn't like consistency.
That was more respectability policy, wasn't it? That was her argument respectability policy.
Yeah.
That thing is 100%. Don't be 100%. My bad.
Okay, go ahead.
I just felt like if we were talking about specifically like misogyny in hip hop, I just didn't appreciate that Lauryn Hill was the example of something negative because of all of like it's not like 5 or 6 chapters. So I just felt like you could have chosen another song to prove that point, in my opinion. And then I feel like there was something else. Oh, and then I do feel like the source was very like heterosexuality was like very central to the whole thing. There's definitely a chapter where she says we need to like fold in our queer sisters more. But that was its own chapter, and so it felt like that was more applied as well. So I just feel like if we're talking about the well-being of all Black women, I feel like there should be more conversation in every single chapter. But I do think that this is her story and her anecdotes and her life. So I can also also respect that that's not her story. So I do get that as well, but I think, just in the book, I felt like by the end, it just is like when we got to the chapter about healing, it felt like it was coming from a place of love, and I feel like that was the reference to me with this. I felt like we went from writing and we're dying for men to just writing and dying for our sisters, and I think it should always be them. Like that. So I think that's what for me. I don't know how to do that.
I think we're saying about that. Yes. It does have a high, of course, right about that. So, I don't know a couple of these songs. I know for this is for and I'm not really discussing that. I I appreciated that level of social development, those songs. So far, when you go there, so I like that the challenge for me that I think about was like one week songs that I like right? And it wasn't so much about the song, but as they say, it was a good one. Where she's part and because there are some songs that just because our artists be mounted didn't understand that right? Necessarily we are the song and that was my mom and mantra. But I'm saying to be over that, to be really like but I could appreciate that. It's so important to me because I was like, oh, and then to that part, there are so many other songs that I'm quite sure are, each generation that becomes there, like, oh, I'll even give you one, which is probably more on me, was, oh gosh. I'm looking at it, I can't think of it, but anyway, it was about, should I give him, hey, what's my girl's name? But anyway, so I appreciated that road down memory lane in what Sister Hubbard was evoking and so forth. Now, I will end by saying that I did feel like there could have been so much more to get part of how it ended. Like, oh wow, we could have gotten some other, songs. And again, maybe because I didn't know a couple of these songs that I felt like, I don't like that one. But so it did spark that, and then I was like, oh man, I do wish there was some other songs that we probably could talk about some other topics because I like how she brought up the common one, and particularly the young girls on the block, and they go down this path, and it's not even sparked by them. It's just how they are interacting with in terms of the world. But the world doesn't see it that way, and so I did appreciate her lens on that. I was like, that's what's up. And so I was hoping for more of those things. And then lastly, I will say, if I wanted to write a book, I was inspired because I thought that the way she wrote it was so easy. I was like, oh, okay, a little bit of this, a little bit of your own personal history, a little bit. And so I appreciated that style of writing. So I was like, if ever you wanted to break into writing a book, this is your little blueprint because that part made it seem easy and what she how she did it. I really appreciate her own life story, like you said about the sister she bought that party. But there were parts that made it say, oh, okay, I can take that challenge on. So
Anyone else want to jump in?
Initial thoughts.
I have a lot of feelings about this book that are good.
Okay.
That are good. So I won't share them all now. But I will say, I really like that it's short and that it has a template, like you're saying. I didn't think it was easy, though, because I thought she said a lot of things very plainly and succinctly, and that's hard to say. She would diagnose a situation, a song, a pattern, a story, and say, this is what this means. And here's what I think we should do to address it. I actually think that's pretty hard to do, to have your thoughts that gathered and say it so briefly and just say. And I thought she did one of the things that appealed to me is that I thought she really worked to balance affirming hip hop and Black men and saying, here's something I love about Common and here's what I wish he had also done. Here's why I fuck with Jay-Z, and here's why I think as a society, this isn't really just about him, but as a society, we shouldn't just be enthralled when someone wakes up. We also need them to do retribution. And so I thought she just did a masterful job of weaving things like that, and it just really deeply moved me. She talked about restorative justice, which is a concept that I have a lot of issues with sometimes, actually, but the way she shortly talked about it and said, when it works well, basically, this is how I think it works well. So I really appreciate that. And I didn't know every single song by heart the way she would, but some of them I did, some of them I didn't, but I still felt very drawn into the descriptions, the videos that she's talking about, and just really, it just really moved me for a variety of reasons. Yeah. I will say one thing that I noticed that I did not like is that at one point she was kind of saying that Black women know what it feels like to be a Black man because we have to, and I thought that wasn't fair. I do think we're very invested in the feelings and the reality and the lives of Black men, and we do have a burden for it. I just don't think I, as a Black woman, can say I know what it feels like to be Panama. I just don't think that's a reach further than I think I should take, and so I wish she hadn't done that. But I do think it's fair for her to say we're very deeply invested in the success and the thriving of Black men.
Folks are looking at me.
No pressure.
No pressure. What's the time? I loved the book. I thought it was beautifully written, and I appreciated that. It didn't feel like she was attacking anyone in the book. It felt like she was just talking about her journey in Black feminism and what that looked like for her. I loved how hip hop, as we all mentioned, was woven into this story. I really appreciated the Lauryn Hill example because I thought it demonstrated how misogyny is just so well baked into like Black culture that you just kind of miss it. Like Lauryn Hill is, one of my favorite artists still. And I think a lot of people view her as just like very pro-Black woman. And I think she is. But just like very gently pointing out how she's like not, how she's still like reinforcing the patriarchy. So I thought that was really good.
And she did that while also including herself.
Yeah.
She wasn't just pointing fingers at people we adore like she would have when she was younger. She pointed at
Which is what I mean.
and saying, "Get like me."
I love that because I agree with you completely. Well, I'm sorry. Were you done?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't want to. Which I appreciate. As I was saying before we got started, like one of the reasons I enjoy this because this is very much how I write. This is like 100% the VSB style of like how we made our bones, how we literally created it was like taking using a song like 444, which the funny thing about some of these things were these are conversations we've literally had in the community, right? 444 drops, and everybody's like, oh my God, Jay-Z's grow up. But there's an entire contingent that's like, why y'all praising this man for coming to the realization at 50 that he's been trashed for the majority of his life, right? And doing that thing that I talked about before too, is like how, man, when we have daughters, all of a sudden we care about women, right? Or even with the Lauryn Hill example, like I remember we used space on my website to talk about how the miseducation is 100% steeped in respectability politics, and how as good as it, well, I love it, but how good some people, how much people love that joint, how a lot of it does lean into patriarchy, right? Or On the Corner, I love how she's talking about, basically, Common got this song about the corner, where women are absent from it. Like you're forgetting what women have to deal with when dealing with the corner.
It's so nuanced too.
Yeah, so for me, I love that. That's why I love how short it is too, because I mean, she packed a lot into that for me in a very short book. And I know people who would spend 500 pages writing this, Michael Eric Dyson. And, you know what I'm saying? And it would be
the homie.
You know what I'm saying? Shouts out, MED. But you know what I mean?
It
Like
takes a long time. It's a lot of big work.
It's just, you know, he got a paragraph and then he writes a book with it. You know what I mean? So, you know, I can appreciate. I'm just, it's like each one of the like themes that are there. I remember these are conversations we've all had internally, and I appreciated the way to like the WAP conversation was ongoing. It's just like it never stopped. Like that joint just could not stop.
It's still going today.
Right, but it's like so the ability to like put all these things into a book and weave how this impacted you like on a very like micro level, but it speaks to a larger conversation. Like I don't know, man. I'm just biased, and like I think I'm biased as hell just because I can see myself doing this. And like, you know, when people write some shit, you be like, man, I don't even need to work on my book now. You got it. You did what I needed to do. I would have to do it differently, but you knocked out stuff to kind of, yeah. And I think I told you, like, when I first read it, I was like, this is the kind of book that I plan on writing, right? Like, she did what I plan on doing. So, you know.
So I appreciate everything that you guys have said. And it gives me, no, I'm not. But it does, like, again, I want to learn and hear and understand, and so look, that's the beauty of reading, right? That's why I love these conversations. That's why doing these book clubs on a monthly basis is so important to me, because this is how I learn, this is how I grow, right? The conversations, even when you disagree, you can learn something from it, but it's okay to disagree, right? Like that's a premise that as a community, as a country, that we could really learn from. It's okay to disagree, right? This is quite all right.
Yes, without expelling somebody,
Right, yes, exactly. and that's the thing, is that so I didn't find it nuanced, right? I found it written with broad strokes. And the respectability politics piece of it, like I feel like the part about this book that kind of bothers me the most is that to me it doesn't seem like it leaves space for other people, right? I might not agree with respectability politics, but if you're a conservative person, right, and that's your worldview, like she was talking about the young lady who's Southern, right? If that's the way that she approaches life, who am I to really say that's wrong, right? If you want to be, I'm saying, right? Everyone has their choice.
But it's funny you use that and you're looking down at the other.
But I'm not. But so here's the thing. I'm saying, I think you're right. You should not. Looking down on another person is contemptible. We should not be doing that. My point is, and this is I think this is where we got to it last month, is that my issue is the freedom. Is that if we're really talking about people's right to be themselves, to choose and to live in freedom, we have to let everyone do that, even when we disagree with them, right? So if they live respectability politics, right, you shouldn't, do these type of things. You need to wear dresses down to your ankle. That's not for me. But it's okay.
But I think the way that she wrote it, though, I don't think she wrote it in a way that she wasn't saying that the women that choose to live that way are bad. It's when you point the finger at other women and say, you should live how I live.
Yes.
That's the problem.
It's the realization that it's not working too. Like you're doing, like, why are you
That's
doing
right.
this?
For her, it wasn't working.
But as a culture, we kind of demonize respectability politics. That's part of it. Like we do, like we don't. But why?
So I have no problem being very much like that because it doesn't work. We are literally conforming to the reason why it exists is to make us docile or less threatening to a culture that we believe we need to gain access to. But it doesn't work, right? That's why the whole, you still a nigga with a bed, it doesn't. I'm butchering that. Y'all know what I mean. Like, it doesn't matter. You learn over time. Who was that? What's that dude? He wrote this whole article in the New York Times about how his son got confronted with being called a nigger at the Ivy League summer program he was in. He's a famous author. He passed away some years ago. I can't remember his name. I wrote an article about this dude because I was so dumbfounded. He was like, I raised him the right way. He didn't get to wear hoodies. He didn't get to dress. He had to wear khakis. He had to do all these things all the time, and he still got hit. It's like because you didn't prepare him for a rude awakening. You literally threw his ass right into the fire, and he got burned. And now you're writing an article in the New York Times about being surprised because it didn't work. You know what I'm saying? So it's like if that's how you choose to ascribe your life, that's one thing.
Right.
But you can't be surprised when it doesn't work. Like the reason why people have so much of an issue with it is because it's been proven time and time again that no matter what if you are not living your full self in hopes of not offending others, it often doesn't work. And we as a culture, Black people have been doing that for too long and it's never worked.
Right.
Derek, I don't think I understand part of your point because the way it sounds, I don't think this is what you mean, but the way it sounds, I actually do think that there are times, I don't care how long anyone's skirt is, that's up to you. But if someone thinks that I am like have loose morals because I wear skirts above my knees, that puts me in danger and in harm's way. And so I do have a right to be critical of how they express their opinions about how long skirts should be and what it means about me, the length of my skirt. Right. So in hearing what you're saying, it sounds like kind of like you're saying, just let people do what they want and mind your business, and not in a like disrespectful way, but like keep your head to the grind, do what you're called to do, and don't worry about it. And I actually do need to worry about it. One, because it causes me harm, but two, because it can cause respectability politics can cause children harm.
Right.
And so I want to be protective of myself, but also of children and other people in the world. And so I don't know how to integrate what you're saying into that.
So the part of that is, and I agree with you. My train of thought is a continuation along that line, is that if you are allowing everyone that option to be themselves and minding your business, then you should not be in danger. Because I'm not bothering you. She's ain't bothering you. No one is bothering you. You have the option to live your existence the way you want to live it. Now, like I was telling Brianna earlier, that's very utopian. People can say that's very naive. But for me, like I'm thinking like long term, what is the solution? Right? If we're dealing with an issue, how do we solve it? And for me, just to keep reworking and talking about what the problems are isn't getting us anywhere. At some point, we have to find a way to evolve ourselves to the place where, if what we truly want is freedom to live an existence without being encroached upon by other people, we have to start making certain kind of decisions.
I'm not sure what you're saying is absolutely different than what she's saying.
I don't really know.
Because it sounds like
there's
you're
part of
saying
it. Yeah.
Let people live, and maybe you wish she had emphasized that a little bit more. You can wear whatever skirts you want and whatnot, but I'm not sure.
So in that moment, I think for me, most in some of the other areas of the book, it just felt like more of a broad stroke. So where you ladies see nuance, I didn't necessarily see nuance, and it might have been in the areas where she was specifically talking about men. Like I did not see the nuance of for Common or Jay-Z. Like I didn't see that.
What about this? With the guy on the corner?
That's Common.
Yeah, that's Common. Yeah, so I didn't really see the nuance there. It felt like she was saying they made a mistake and there was
They didn't. She
Right.
was saying-
no. I get that part. And she was saying, and so men who write these songs is like that's what they are.
I think the-
And my issue is
Yeah.
that, but that's a broad stroke that at that point begins to now erase me because I'm not that, right? So that's where our conversation. So I understand what you're saying. I'm not at a place yet. I'm still trying to work the language and figure out how to get this point across. But for me, there seems to be a conflict there that I'm trying to understand. There needs to be more nuance in a conversation that allows every person to have their viewpoint and to be able to stand in that, while also respecting the fact that the violence, the predatory actions, the trauma that women deal with, we stamp that out, right? We call it out. There's a real critique for hip hop in these places that they're using and they're using it just to make money. Like I don't even believe it. We were joking. Like some of these men they're married. You're talking about these women that you with. Like, are you married? Like, what are we talking about? Like, you're not even living this life anymore. You a hood, but you got a big $5 million mansion in Connecticut. Like, stop. Like, at some point, what are we doing? Like, it becomes more cartoon than anything.
So if I could just offer this, that's the beauty in it falling back on the artist. And to that common particular piece, the way she ended it, she said, I wish they would, or he would, whoever the artist, realize the gravity that you're bringing to it and how there's more to the corner, so to speak. She brings that out. So she talks her piece, but then she's like, yes, there's this, that, there, and I wish that part would have came out. But then no condemnation on Common. That was just how, that's the lens that they didn't see. Whereas if we see, did you see that police car around the corner twice? You see, whereas somebody didn't even realize the sight. I mean, the car. And that's what she's saying. She's like, I wish you saw that he rolled around 2-3 times. And I appreciated that. Because again, I didn't hear it. I don't know the song directly, but I know that. I know what she was expressing. I saw the visual. But I would also offer, Derek, that I appreciate where you're coming from, not so much with this book, but that understanding, because I am about to go off on a tangent. We do need that level of real consciousness and thought to how we strategize, whether it's Tennessee or some great stuff. That's what I said. I'm just going to say that, but I do appreciate what you think with that. But to this, I feel like she said, we could have did some more in that part, particularly with that story with Common. I feel like she said, I wish y'all brothers did see some more to that. And I think she lays that out there. And even with the other song, I'll just go back to my sister who that's what it was. So I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna say this. I remember the song. It was recently Anacostia, and But One If I Take You Home. That used to be my other, I felt that way. So back to what this song in this book was supposed to resonate. We took certain songs and almost kind of lived it. You know what I'm saying? It was like, sorry. But anyway, but then to the other part of the book is where as she's writing this, again, I just really appreciate that there are people who think like this.
Yeah.
So to that part, there are people who really took these songs to heart. Now, I'm not saying I didn't take it to heart. I did to some degree hear it and play it, but it wasn't what I did when I was with Dude. But you know what I'm saying? But it's funny, whether it's the long skirts or whatever that you really was a stickler to, whether it was the Southern or whatever that was your sticky point. What I appreciate is that in this book, it did expose that there are people who really almost take it to heart. And that is where I had to have a little bit of compassion and say, oh,
I think.
So and now it's up to you. I just want to add this piece to it to help, maybe hopefully clarify. When she talked about Common, and she ended up, one of the things she said was, I don't have the words from it, but she basically said it was him telling his story as a black man on a corner. Now, if that's his story, right, then the question is, just like me in this book, can I really critique it? If it's not being written for you, right? If it's his story, if it's his experience, now it's being requested, well, I just need you to kind of take your experience and now include me in it.
I
But
think we can criticize Common as a man who promotes himself as a lover of black
I'm
women
not-
and consciousness.
Yes, because it's problematic. Because it's problematic there.
That song is not individual, by the way. Just, I don't know if y'all listen to the corners, but this song is just about the corners in general.
Yeah.
It's not an
She pointed
individual
that
song.
out.
Like it ain't. It's
Yeah.
not my day on the corner.
Right.
It's the corners. Right. It's kind of like do that thing. It's not a song about Lawrence. It's like
right.
women in general. Like WAP is sexual freedom. Women in general. Like these aren't individual storytelling songs. You know what I mean? Like this. My bad. Anyway, I just wanted to put it out there. Like
I wondered if we can critique in the sense that she also said this in the book somewhere. I don't want to erase black men in their stories. I want to ask them to include me because they do. They date me. They need me. They live and engage with me. So when they're telling these stories of the community, can I be included in the community?
Yes. That is on page 64 and 65.
Here right now.
So let's go.
What paragraph? Go ahead. Go ahead. I ain't mad at you.
last
Scholar
period.
is scholar.
I am not
I
mad at
like to
you.
see the examples in real time. That's why I was like flipping like a crazy person over here trying to find the common part. Well, I'm here to
Yeah, I wish I could give you this feeling. Is that what you at?
I don't
Where you
want
at?
black men to feel
Yes.
erased in order for us to be heard. I
very
don't want them to
succinctly
feel
states exactly that.
She wasn't, it wasn't even a critique. I don't think she was
Trying to be
critiquing
part of the
many
story.
people.
Right.
And
she's just
65
like,
on my
I'd
black
like to
women
be
to
involved.
Just
confirm.
like jump in.
Right. And she says, this means holding themselves and their friends accountable.
Mhm.
This means that, and then she continues on, she goes further at the very end at 65, she says, I want the hip hop community as a whole to feel a greater responsibility to black women and as a result, center complex narratives about issues that harm us.
And I go again. She said, I want them to instead join us in the fight to protect black women and girls from sexual violence. So she considered that.
That means when you
That was
hear
bars.
it or see it,
She was very gentle towards black men, quite frankly. I think she was nice. Like,
Right. I didn't get no real bad.
My feelings were hurt reading this book, and that's probably should have been, right? Like my feelings were hurt. I'm reading this like
You saying he was hurt?
no, they weren't.
Right.
Like that's what I'm saying. Like they weren't
Exactly.
hurt. I'm reading the book, and for all the stuff that was kind of directed at us. Now, perhaps I'm evolved, but all these like conversations we have with the homies, like you right, bro. I feel you. Like you're not wrong. Like we do need to spend more time checking the homies who are engaging in activities, and we do that. What happens when you get older and you marry? You have to cut them. You have to cut them N-words out your life because they're about to get you messed up in the game, right? So they gotta go. And then, but when the homies that are married and are messing up, you gotta pull them to the side and be like, bro, what are you doing? I have done this. I have a homie or two who was absolutely lost his damn mind. And we've had to have those combos the same way I would expect him to do it to me. So, these are combos that we do have to have as men about the way that we interact with women. The hope is that as you get older, but what she skillfully addresses is in the Jay-Z joint, like, all right, so you did it, now what? So now you're just saying, my bad, I was trash. Y'all should love me now. Love me for this. And there is some, now, I don't know what Jay-Z should do. I don't know if Jay-Z should have, hopefully he made amends to Beyonce, which is the subject of that song, right? Like effectively, they hope they got their thing together. I don't know, but like for a lot of us, there is, you can't go back to every person that you've done wrong
Ooh,
and apologize.
right,
That don't
right,
work.
right. Yeah,
For
'cause
one,
that's
I
what
tried
it
that
was.
with somebody and that shit went all wrong,
I mean, if
right?
I don't accept it, then that's fine. I don't know if you can't go back. I think if they say I'm good, then they're good.
But so here's the
But
here-
that's
but
not
here's
the
why.
book.
I'm gonna give you the man side of this. Here's why it's a bad idea.
Right.
Where she is in life is very important to know this because I did this with somebody. And you know what happened? She was like, all right, you apologizing. I want that old thing back. So what's up then? It's like, so you realize that you were wrong. Now, now what? And it's like, ooh, I was really just trying to apologize and let you get your bars off. So if you needed to kind of, and so what I'm saying is, I'm not saying that's everybody's thing. What I am saying is that personal experience has shown me that on occasion, it's hard to end a conversation with just I'm sorry, and sometimes it ends there.
But so
I think just
practice
because she
that.
had other intentions.
Oh, okay, well,
doesn't
I-
mean that she didn't deserve the apology.
I felt like I felt this way about the book too. I just finished watching 1619 Project on Hulu.
Yeah.
And I do feel like I think this book was a good conversation starter, and I think a lot of these dynamics that she's talking about, I think it's rooted in something else, and I want to dig deep into that because I think figuring that out, it might help us solve these other problems. And so I think that was another thing that I felt like, when the chapter ended, I'm like, why? Like, why is it this way? So like, even with the apology, if this man, did grow up and get himself together, I don't know how. I mean, like, it even seemed like she was mad on behalf of the girl whose like tax refund was stolen. So it's like, I don't even know if the guy did anything to her specifically for her to be upset.
She was representing.
She was a ride or die for the sisterhood.
Wait, no, he asked her if she could co-sign for his bank account.
No, that was wrong. But
She-
$500 was not.
No, that
But the
wasn't.
brother
But in the
didn't
conversation, he's like, "So you gonna help me out or not?" So it's like he's
He just
continuing
says,
on the path of
"Right,
destruction.
If she wants to, continue to be hurt about it, she can. But I think what I'm trying to say is that, like, I think all of these chapters, like, we know the Black community is what it is because of other reasons. And I feel like the 1619, like, even talking about, like, Amazon and stuff, like, we were seeing a lot of, like, modern day issues that are rooted in, like, the slavery that we dealt with. And so I think that some of these dynamics between the men that she's talking about in all these chapters, or even the women that she's talking about, I'm just curious about, like, where did these social norms even come from?
Remember, she's a clinical psychologist.
So I feel like she knows. She probably would know. And so that is I don't know, maybe that's my own, like, homework to kind of further this
So
research.
you mean you wanted to? So as an additive, it'd be like, so what you have is cool, but how do we get here to be in the space to have this chapter in the first place, or the individual chapters, or like the
That's what I'm curious about. Yeah,
Okay.
the song.
I'm going back to the artist. I ain't tripping on. I appreciate and this, I guess this is the beginning of, you said involvement, her own growth. She was with a dude, didn't he go to jail?
Yeah.
That's that ride or die. It was like, really? She said the phone bill was expensive and it was
Yeah,
cool.
She wasn't even with him that long. She was with him like
She
7
was
months.
holding on, and I'm
Right.
like, and that's why I said, oh wow, I can appreciate just the exposure. Like I said, that some people really hold on to these things, and it didn't have to be you, sis, but
Yeah.
that's the title, and you was.
But that is
Dying
my
for it.
question. Like, who taught her to do that? Because I wouldn't have done that. So I don't know who. So I mean, maybe he did. So like, maybe that's why he's the subject. But that's what I'm saying with, like, what and I mean, she's saying it's the hip hop, but to me, it's something deeper than that.
Like, I think so often. Yeah, I was gonna say, I think so often, to your point about, I don't know how far it goes back, but I think so often, at least me, man, I be feeling bad for Black men, right? Because we know Black men go through shit, and we know they're, targeted by police and all this other shit, right? So I don't know if we can use foul language in here, but
it's frowned upon, but I do.
Yes. So I think sometimes you get to be the, the ride or die, or you lean into that, is because you're like, man, I know this Black man been through a lot. And it's like, but wait, that actually has nothing to do with me. Like, sometimes you do got to take yourself out of it, but I see how she could get there. I also wouldn't get there, but like, I see how you could be like, man, Black man, he don't got nobody. You know what I mean? Like, he needs somebody. Like, as Black women, we got to take care of each other. It's a community, and we're the pillars of the community. Like, who's gonna take care of him?
I think
I didn't feel that level of pity
got
for him,
there.
and I didn't feel she brought that out. As much as I felt, I'm sorry, that she just didn't want to remember. She was living with the cousin and the other girl. She wanted to change that dynamic, and she got it.
I think she wrote about in the book that the church is how she got there, the things that she
that
learned in the
too.
church, family, aunties, and them who would. I think some of what she pointed out is that she got there directly and indirectly.
Mhm.
So older Black women in the family got her there by not being horrified by the things that happen to Black women, but being horrified by the things that happen to Black men. So when her ass is grabbed, that's just what happens on the block. But when a Black man's space is encroached upon, that is endangerment. But the Black girls are lost, Black men are endangered, and it's men versus girls, like this kind of stuff. So I did think she kind of did her work to show us this is how we get there. And even, I feel like she's asking us as Black women, even if you weren't spending all your money on a nigga in jail, how are you doing this at work? How are you doing this in other relationships? How are you being ride or die? And essentially, because she talked about that example with her daughter, how or her job, how are you giving your all to something else other than your own well-being and yourself? You are also then manifesting this ride or die mantra, even if it's not for a man. One specifically.
Adversely, think about how many men have that thing. Like, if a woman is down in the same way that some of these guys were down in this book, like, how many of them would have taken up the same feat or felt that obligation to show up in that same way? To be honest, they might have just been like, oh, well, and kept on pushing, where I feel as a lot of what her point
somebody
was.
in there's like, I've been going through stuff too.
Right. It's like I'm literally on the bus right now because of you. You're asking me to put your name in my account. Like, come on, how differences. But I think to your point, Derek, earlier where you were saying you felt like a disconnect because she was saying like she knows or can see the world through Black men's eyes, or like could write a dissertation on the plight of the men, on the plight of Black men in America. I think it's more so coming from like an empathetic state, right? Of her saying that, especially with what you were just saying, is that like, oh yeah, we do feel bad. We see like this is how they treat us, so we're trying to elevate and make it easy for you too, while also keeping ourselves afloat. It's like you gotta put your life vest on first, or was it the oxygen mask on yourself first before you put it on others? But a lot of times we're expected to put it on others or on the Black men and let them hold on to it while it's being detrimental to us.
So can I just testify for a second too, by the way?
Go ahead.
When you just said something about like Black girls being lost, that reminded me, in this book she specifically points out the song Black Girl Lost by Nas. You know that song?
Yeah.
Let me tell you, I used to love that song. I thought that song was the realest shit I had ever heard. When that joint comes out in 96, I'm like 16. When this song comes out, I'm listening to it. I love the way it opens up. That I'm trying to go to the club now. What are you talking about? God body back to Africa stuff. We need to go with a Black, then popping that Chris out. Like, I loved it. I was like, so I didn't even realize what the song was talking about until I ended up doing a podcast with some people about Nas' It Was Written album. And they're talking about how terrible that song is. I'm like, Black Girl Lost? And then I'm like, Black Girl Lost? How's she lost? Then I listen to the song, I'm like, oh my God, like, but it reminds me about how many of these songs were basically like that. So on Goody Mom's second album, Still Standing, there's a song that I was always like, why isn't this song more popular? It's called Beautiful Skin. It sounds beautiful, but the whole song, I remember CeeLo talking about, I can't respect you if you don't respect yourself in the first place kind of stuff. To me, at the time, I was like, yes. And I'm like, my God, was I that guy that really was like out here espousing and thinking about that stuff? So when I'm reading some of them, I'm like, damn. I was that guy at some point. And I think a lot of us are that guy, especially when you're younger, because of the way, and I don't even know where I learned it. So that gets kind of your fault. I don't even know where I learned some of this stuff. Like, I don't remember my father being particularly like, maybe, yeah, what's up?
I feel like there's a lot of like, I don't think this book was for me, but if it was, how would you know? Like, if you are the target audience that she's like, you are the person who portrays this. Like, I think you would say it's, like, I don't think I agree with this, because I feel like you're exactly like who she is.
Yeah, no, I love the book though. So I'm reading the book because I'm seeing aspects of myself in a lot of this stuff, right? Like, I'm seeing the conversations that I've had with the homies about things that are in this book on almost every one of these chapters, right? Like literally and you know, while there's songs that she's using to kind of center it, it's the bigger theme, right? That we're talking about this stuff. She found the perfect songs to have these. When 444 comes out, we couldn't stop talking about Jay-Z's growth. And and I've already said that, but like I remember a lot of us being like, this is dumb, guys. Like all these black dudes sitting around talking about, yeah, I've grown. It's like, but now what? Like, what are you doing now? Like, that's great. Or, you know, so I remember, so for me, I don't know whether I was the intended audience, but I damn sure got something out of it because I'm seeing myself in versions of myself here in the growth that I've personally gone through to get to the point where by the time we get to the end of the chapter, I know where it's going because I get it. Like now, like most things in life, it's you know better, you got to do better. And I have 4 kids, right? So I'm literally looking at my children and trying to make sure that the things and the person that I was that I can recognize now, like I don't impart that stuff into them. Mm-hmm. So, you know, whether the book is for me, I got a lot out of it because I could see, I get what she was trying to do, and I can appreciate it because I've been some of the people, I've thought about these things, so I don't know. I mean,
not you. I think like trying to give this book, particularly like to my dad or my brother, like they're not going to do this, and they're not even going to do it for me, and like that kind of.
Well, they're probably not doing it because the title says
right,
"Feminist Black Women." So, which makes it easy to dismiss this stuff.
In front of them, then is my question.
I feel like I don't know.
Okay.
But it seems like the book is a bit of a love letter to women, Black women, and hip hop. But all Black people can read it and help us strengthen our community, right? I don't know if she was targeting
about to ask her, by the way.
The guy. I feel like it's to help Black women be more liberated. And if our brothers and people who are non-binary will read it too, in support of that, that's kind of the whole point of the book. How can we be in support?
So then the target audience then is not men.
I like what you said about liberated because I do think that there are a couple sides per each chapter that one could walk away with, right? And that's for us to, whether we want to use the word involvement or grow, to come out of. You know, whether you like the song or not, now, and especially if there was not the most positive attributes in it, are you still holding on to that? Because then you should have now picked up and evolved, right? It's one thing for parts of the Lauryn Hill song to be like, you know, the weeds, European and all that kind of stuff, and then, you know, stop being a hard rock when you really are a gem, like baby girl. Have you evolved from it, you know? And I think that's the other thing, whether it's just for us women, okay, we don't gotta be so hard on us and everybody else around you. You know, don't be a hard rock when you really are a gem. And just, you know, take that with it. So I did appreciate that, you know, and like I said, again, back to the exposure for some people really did take some of these songs to heart, and I was like, oh wow. Because like I said, I didn't know some of these songs, but oh my God. But I appreciate that because that's the layered experience in which we all gonna come into when we meet people. You know, the way you feel about a song, it may not be how I feel about the song. And with that, but if we really, so I think there is some liberation into, there's more to it. We don't have to, you know, die in the grave with just one aspect of how the song was typecasted, so to speak.
She's about to text me back, y'all.
It felt very familiar. It felt very familiar to me. I felt all the concepts. I only got up to 444, but I felt all the concepts they rang very true. And it felt like she was just like reaffirming our experience as well. So I think the book is for anybody who's interested in an accurate, for me, authentic representation of how Black women feel and how Black women feel they're treated in some ways. Going back to like how the foundation of like this ride or die chick I think a lot of it, from what I connected to, was the expectation of women in the home, the expectations that were unsaid, but the expectations of how they were, second place. You care for your kids, you care for your husband, you care for all these other things, and you fill all these roles in order to maintain this or perform femininity or perform womanhood in the home. And I think that puts us in a position to be around that, puts us in a position to do this labor, to do this work in order to create value, because that's how we're seen, as creating value in the home, what we bring to the home. And it's right or that, because the whole connection with other people are going to save me, because my job is to impart into other people. My job is to do labor for other people, because in turn, the love that they give me, that's the thing that's going to make me feel valued. That's the thing that's going to make me feel valuable in the world. So I think she tied that all in well together.
And I love that you said perform femininity and womanhood. I think for me, it just reinforces that I decide what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
There is, and I can, perform it how someone else wants me to perform it, but that's not necessarily femininity or womanhood, right? It's what I decide it is.
She talks about that in the part on WAP.
Yes.
Like you all, let's ask ourselves the questions about what it means to be sexual in this world and the ways in which we want to. And no one can answer that for you except for you.
Like all the little stereotypes and messages that we receive, messages from our family, messages from people who love us, messages from TV telling us what it's supposed to look like, what sexy is supposed to look like, what's this supposed to look like. Cross your legs like this, don't cross your legs like that.
Yeah.
There's so many things, and everybody is aware of all these things. We all walking around like it's, there are all these invisible things, but they're there. We're all aware of them. And what if womanhood was, this is the way I feel in my body. My experience is valid, my feelings are valid, and I'm going to listen to my intuition and tell me how to sit, how to walk, how to go into a store, how to do all the things that we do on a regular basis that are kind of conform to what we're conditioned to be.
1000%. And a little bit to your point earlier, I think if you want to accept 50% of what society says womanhood looks like, then do that. But I think there's no need to judge other women for not doing that as well. So I think that's where the respectability politics comes into play. It's you live your life, I live mine.
Why are we trying to come to a consensus?
We don't have to.
You could be your version of womanhood.
I love
her
rooming Tamara in
Yes.
college,
Yes.
and there's this dialogue between them. They're maybe the only women with natural hair in their immediate circle. And so Shanita is judging the hell out of everybody.
All the words and stuff.
And Tamara, I think, is doing what you have been describing. Like, well, I'm just doing me. So why are you so upset that they are doing this other stuff over here? I thought that was
Right, because she had a moment where she had to pull back from her girl, from her roommate, because it's like, wait, so I appreciated that.
I got an answer, by the way.
There you go.
Oh yeah, we've been texting the whole time. We've been texting back and forth. So I asked her who the audience was.
Okay.
She said black women age 35 and up who can quote bell hooks. Let me finish. There's a whole thing.
Can we just stop? I just would appreciate. She is so excited. I'm just like, I am happy for all the good news.
That it wasn't me.
She's just like,
Black women age 35 and up who can quote bell hooks, but their body still knows what to do when nothing butt comes on. And for black men who value and love black women.
There. See, that's.
Which is interesting because when
It wasn't for you though.
when you were
So I would love the conversation. I would love the conversation. I would love the conversation with her to, but for me, it is the nuance. I did not see the nuance. Listening to you all, first of all, I appreciate like that 5-10 minute moment when you ladies were just talking, right? And that I appreciate because, as you were saying, it's not about any man specifically. It's about like this culture of what women deal with. And that to have a space for women to talk about like vulnerably and just be honest in a moment is very important. And that I'm down with. I did not, like, and again, I'm very clear, right? I did not see the nuance. And that's a Derek thing and my own triggers that I have from my past experiences and how I view like some of my values in the relationship between men and women, how we communicate with each other. That is a very specific Derek thing that fortunately only my wife has to contend with. Right? But it is, but there's a part, huh? Well, they're non-binary. So as they were growing, right, I had that moment, okay, well, I can't play this music no more, right? So I went through all of that, right? But I think there's a conversation that can be had. I think it's fair to critique hip hop, right? I think there's a lot of it that I might do. You can just do this whole song differently and get the same thing out of it. You can choose different words and different approaches. And for me, like if we wasn't so caught up on the capitalism aspect of it, of just what sells, maybe we could choose to do art that actually uplifted, right? And that's what I prefer. A lot of the art that's coming out now is not about uplifting, it's not about inspiring folk. So I'm clear on that there's a real critique for it. I just have my own personal issues with how we have the conversation. And a lot of it is based in my experiences with Black women, because I just never came out of that approach. I'm not no more a social media person, so like these conversations I'm not seeing. My personal experience has always been around strong Black women who, like, it's never been an issue to that, like this question. I just don't get it. It's not my reality. So it's a very specific Derek thing, right? So that's why, for me, it's not written for me, because sometimes you mentioned later, there's certain books that I can't read Dr. Naeem Akbar now and get the same kind of thing out of it, right? I can hand it to other brothers, right? And they get a different feeling out of it. But if I read it now, like it's like a refresher course, right? It's not really eye-opening. There's other books I need to read that are really kind of challenging for me. And that's what like this was for me. It was like, okay, cool, like a reader type thing. Like,
what is it? So like, all right, so I'm glad she sent that who it's for, right? Because I guess it kind of crystallizes for me. Like this is, one of the reasons that we've talked about this before, that I feel like Very Smart Brothers was successful, was because you could tell that we actually liked Black women, right? Like it was weird. It was was that?
That's a long, yeah.
Yeah, like it was, it was a space that Black women could come and speak and be respected and have their opinions. Like it was that kind of environment, right? So when I'm reading this, I guess that's partially why I'm reading it that way, because I'm like, I'm listening, right? I'm basically listening to a person I know personally express her own experiences in life and how she interacted with the world and came to her own like feelings and opinions about certain things that impact the world that I live in with her, right? So it's basically like the reason why I think it's for like when she says it's a book for Black men who value it, because like I'm listening and gaining something out of it, because like, damn, this is somebody I know. This is what you went through. So, but even if I didn't know her, I'm assuming I would still like it because of all of the elements, the hip hop and all this stuff in it. But I don't even know, like, I don't know if I would tell the woman who wrote this that I didn't know, it's like, man, I feel like this needs more nuance. Because I feel like I feel like you're missing something. There's something missing from this. Because this is very experiential. Like this is very much rooted in the experiences that she's having that could probably serve as a proxy for, she said it feels very familiar, right? Like, a lot of experiences a lot of women have. So I guess that maybe that's where I come from is like, all right, I'm learning. This is 100% me listening to a woman express to me how a woman that I could have interacted at any of these times, how she's viewing the ways that I interact with the same art. So I'm listening to the corner and I'm getting one thing out of it, and she's listening to it, getting a completely different thing out of it. Neither of them are wrong, but there's something missing about the way that the same thing that like men always, there's a constant like erasure of women in these stories and things like that when we do it, right? Like, so I think perhaps that's why, for me, why I love this so much, because I feel like I'm just listening, like being a true ally, I guess, in some ways, in some, I don't know, that's probably overstated, but the ability to listen and gain from it and be like, all right, there is a learning that can be happening here. You're telling me what I need to do to help you be safe. You're telling me what needs to happen for me to interact with you in a way that makes you feel full and validated and whole. Because I feel like that's literally what she did in this whole book. Every chapter ends with, here's what we need or what I need, blah, blah, blah. And all of it felt very much like, that ain't asking for a lot. It just seems like you asking me to look at you like a human, the way that you are arguing that you have to look at us like all the humanity you're extending to every man that you mentioned in this book. You just want that back. Like, that's how I took it.
But you wrote a song that you knew everybody would like or have known, and then laid out the blueprint.
Yeah, I mean, that's the reason I opened up with the VSB thing, because there was a lot of learning that me and Damon did over the course of time, but it was happening in real time, right? So as we're writing these horrible takes about things, I wrote some terrible things. I'm getting called to the carpet immediately, right? Because we had a comment section that created this space for whatever. So I don't know. I don't even know if I'd be who I am today without that website and creating a space that allowed so much immediate feedback from women who checked me immediately about some of the thoughts and things. Because I'm writing articles. I'm like, did that? And somebody's like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. Why do you think that way? And I'm like, well, I think that way because it's like, that is the second stupidest thing I've ever heard. like, do you even believe what you're saying? Do you like the people you're talking about? It's like, of course I do. But now that you say that, it's like, so to your question, like, how do you get this to like a specific man? Like, every dude ain't gonna read this, right? But I'm thinking like, if I'm to approach this with some of the homies, right? Like, listen, this is a book that speaks about things we care about, because you're talking about all the hip hop and all the stuff, but it also talks about how we interact with the women we've been dealing with our whole lives. Like all these women, like all these conversations we had in college where we argued back and forth about this, that, and third, whatever, and we were standing our ground, but hopefully we've kind of grown over time. But it's literally those conversations. Like, do you love Black women? Then this should not be a hard book to read. Like, if you love Black women, like you say you do, do you like Black women? Because there's a lot of dudes that straight up don't. There are means to an end. There are means to legacy, as opposed to a.
I really don't know, and I think I've even spent time with my own self, because reading this book, I felt like this is somebody's personal story. So if I feel the need to be defensive, then I probably am that person that she is talking about. And I feel like I went through the book like that. So I honestly don't know how to get like men to read it, because I believe that the people who I think need to read it will immediately be defensive. And I feel like if you are, then you are that person.
So the bookseller in me is going to speak now, right?
Uh-oh.
And this is, but there's a book for every person. And that's kind of my approach to it, is that for me, for this book not to be my cup of tea is okay. Mm-hmm. Because there's going to be something else that resonates with you. So that's why I don't have a hard time saying, like, for me, this book wasn't for me. There's other books that I know that we've read that I'm sitting there. We read Zora Neale Hurston, 2 months ago, and I'm checking myself all through that book. And I'm like, okay, no. Like I'm checking myself. So but So if give a person a book, like my thing as a bookseller is give the person a book. If they don't like this one, there's something else.
I think that's okay, but I think, are you being honest with yourself about why this book is not for you?
Yes.
So I asked that question
Oh,
actually,
okay.
not as eloquently.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Because without, like, I can get into it after this, but without dredging up a lot, it really does come down to the way I see how men and women have these conversations. And that's always been an issue for me. And my fundamental, I'm a Libra through and through. I'm about balance, right? I'm all about balance. And if I want something, I need to be able to give it to you. And if you want something, you should be able to offer it to me. And in this book, I didn't always feel like it was offered me that same respect. Now, and that's why I can take a step back and just, hey, you know what? That's fine. Like I say, we can disagree. This book will help somebody. We'll have it on the shelves. We'll recommend it to people. And if you get something out of it, again, that moment where you ladies was talking, that's what we need to have those conversations.
I think it's beautiful that you can say you appreciated that moment where you were the fly on the wall and we were able to have this conversation, but we could not have had this conversation without this book. And I feel like everyone was saying that, like, in these hip hop songs, like, we are eradicated and we do feel like we don't have a space to do this.
But do I have to like the book for you to have that conversation?
I don't know. I think that's what we always ask. Like, what does it really mean to like? Do you like this
No, but
conversation that we're having right
but
now?
see,
That
those-
this book
but
is
see,
starting.
Those things are two independent ideas.
Okay, and that's fine.
Because if I'm not here, like I probably need to be at Austin Hill, like helping with the event we have, right? And this same conversation could happen without me being here, and you would still be impacted. I don't have to be here for the conversation to happen.
I think part of what she's saying though is that we need men.
Yeah.
No,
Be
but so
here
and
and
a man
engaging
chose his
as
book,
well.
and a man said, "Hey, let's promote this book and have this conversation."
I have a question though. Like this is based on something you
Right.
just said.
That is true, but I think the point still remains. There's two men here.
Right.
It would be nice.
It would be nice.
if they were-
And one left. I don't know what made this
Did he have that
To be fair,
bro?
yeah.
He directed me here. I'm
But
I
yeah.
had a book, but he so he said it was a good comment.
Yeah, the vast majority of our
Would be
events are.
Maybe it used to be a lot more men that were here though. I mean, when we first started, it was definitely
It
a
was
lot.
like
I mean, it was
It was
closer
still-
to whatever. But so I have a question for you based on what you just said. So you read Their Eyes Are Watching God, and in that book, you're like feeling like, man, is this what Ramonda's dealing with? These are the things
because
okay. But so I'm wondering why did that book inspire you to think internally about stuff in a way that this book, which is just fiction or not, this is just not, I guess, nonfiction. That's a fiction book, but the only difference is that it's fiction versus nonfiction. Really, I mean, I guess the way it's written. But so why did that book inspire you to think about those things that way, and this book effectively turned you off?
And I question that. I legitimately, because we talked about that before as well. I think, and what I said to myself this morning when I was talking to Ramonda about this book, is I need to, because I listened to it. And when I said to myself, I think I need to find time to sit and read this book.
Mhm.
Because me listening to it, especially a
I did
nonfiction
not
book.
like the voice. That was
I read it and
So
listened
you
to it,
audibly you did this audible
We use
versus
Pro
reading?
FM.
that
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. I read
I did too. And I didn't love it.
That's
internet.
interesting.
That creates a
So-
disconnect when I'm doing
Yeah.
fiction.
So it's hard for me to listen to nonfiction as an audio. And I said this morning to Ramonda, I was like, I need to get some time and sit down and read the book. Because engaging with the words personally is a little bit more intimate. Right. And you give me maybe a closer appreciation for what is happening here on the page, right? Listening to, because I listened to Their Eyes Are Watching God as well, the fiction of it, me rooting for characters, me digging on the style of it, the metaphors and all that other stuff allowed me to emotionally connect with it. So as now I'm listening to the words, it did hit me different. So I really do believe like I probably need to sit down and read it differently and read it to see, to give it, maybe there's a door that hasn't been opened because of the way I approach the book. So I'm that could honestly be it. And I'm okay with that, you know, my mind changing completely based on that.
It wasn't just the voice; it was the cadence of the voice that made it.
Yes.
Yeah, which is because I know her too. I can hear her saying some of this stuff. She has an extremely New York accent. Like Shanita's 100, like straight New York. Like, so it's interesting when I'm listening to it. You know, like it is.
I take exception
No, that was-
to that. Thank you.
Well, I mean, but yeah, I mean, like, listen, you know, we know where you're from the second you start talking. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know. And I will say, I enjoyed the New Yorkness of it and how it was like, y'all New York can be so insufferable. But she's New York.
I didn't even say where I'm from. You know,
But you can tell, you know.
But you know, again, like I said, and I brought this up earlier, it did challenge me to think of, like I said, certain songs that I said, okay, what did I hold on to? And I brought it up. It was Lisa Anacostia and Wonder If I Take You Home. That was it. And that En Vogue song, you know, so there were, and so I can appreciate that too. And I think when it was brought up about there are elements to this book that not only does a song place that level of nostalgia in you, but whether you're talking about college, we all had a roommate, roughly. You know what I'm saying? Whether it's the, you know, just even a little bit of church, whether you go to church or not, you heard a little bit of that church part. So you're like, oh, okay, I know about that. So, and, you know, there's different elements throughout that you felt like, oh, yeah. Like the corner, you know, there's definitely visuals that say, oh yeah, I was at the bodega, and so you got it, and I really that you know really added the colorfulness and made to me, I thought, an easier read to go through this.
And I'm going to piggyback on what you said about the imagery. It just brought it to life in the one part that really jumped out to me, and I would recommend this especially to young ladies, the part about the violence against women, because that has happened so many times. The image of you're running into a store to avoid a man out there harassing you and something. And I don't think men understand that to that extreme. Maybe if they speak to their sister or cousin, but that jumped out. She really gets it.
I take it one step further. Khalil Browder ran into a store. And unfortunately, that was, you know, his situation because he was running, and then all of a sudden, he didn't steal nobody's book back. But he, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, people go in the stores thinking they're getting protection, and it's crazy how depending on who owns the store, which tends to not be us, unfortunately. We need more of us. So thank you, Derek. Cheers. But we need, you know, to be store owners and but yeah, so you're in a store, something's about to go down, but the person who you think should be at least, you know, this is my cry for help, completely miss it. Buy something. You know? So, yeah.
Or even that chapter, wasn't the guy like friends with her brother or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was so like predatory. Yeah.
I love that. So, you know, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
I mean, it's very normal, but I think that's the whole thing about like, I don't even feel like the older brother feels like he could have played any role. Like, it just happens. Like, I don't know.
Which is why I can appreciate, Pam, like, you even just expressing that level of like, you know, that could have been me, that was me, or whatever. I've grown in that level of growth. Appreciate that, yes. Unfortunately, whether it's back to the 444, dang, 50, half your life, you gotta wait. Come on. Now you ain't see this. You shouldn't have to wait to have a girl child to say, oh, I should start doing some things differently. But, you know, teach your own growth.
I mean, you shouldn't, but I think it just happens. I mean, I hate to say that. I mean, it sucks. No, it sucks. It's just. And I don't know how to fix that. Like I genuinely don't. Like,
but there are conversations, and it's like so the thing is that, like, and I'm very aware, and that you talked about your homies when y'all having conversations. My homeboys, when we're having conversations, ooh, yeah, that wasn't a good look. How do we, because the thing is that there's evolution for everybody, right? And the evolution that we go through when we realize, you know what, that wasn't what society has told us was the way to approach it. It's not the correct way to approach it. You take ownership of it. Okay, nah, bro, you talk to the homies. That's not what you do, right? I've personally mentored and counseled guys who are married about the partnership aspect, like this the ride or die thing, right? My wife is ride or die. The difference is she's my partner. She's not there to teach me. She's not there to save me. I am submitted to her just as much as she's submitted to me, right? We're there to serve each other. That's the part of us teaching each other. So when the next young brother gets married, he's 23. When I learned that at 30 something, he knows it earlier in his relationship, right? There is an evolution, there is a conversation that's happening. And I think that's the part that, I know is happening. And to your point, it's not necessarily for me to, that's the nuance that I get. Like, it's not always some brothers. If that's the experience you're having, that's the experience you're having, point blank period. But do know that conversations are being had, right? That guys who are willing to listen, right? Even when they come into the store and I take an hour of their time talking to them about certain books, right? Conversations are happening. It's not you're just out to your own devices. Like,
I want to talk about.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, tell a quick story. I was gonna move in with some friends a couple years back when I got back to DC, and one was a white guy, one was a black guy, and we were gonna find a place, like a house to rent. And there was a neighborhood in DC, and we were going to look at the house. I got off the train, and there was a liquor store right there. People hanging outside the liquor store. We each get there individually. We get to the house, it's a nice house. I'm immediately like, I'm not about to live here. There's people hanging outside the liquor store.
Yeah.
The white guy was 100% down. He's like, let's go. Like, what's wrong? Oh, you don't want to. He's like judging me for not wanting to walk past this liquor store with all these men. He's like, what? You don't want to live in the hood? You scared? You don't want to live by black people? And I'm like, I don't know. You're not getting this. He didn't see it. The black friend, he also didn't see it, right? I'm like, I don't feel safe walking home from the train station to get home. And so I think the conversations are happening, but I think that's the part that feels a little nuanced, because it's like, she talked about police brutality. And the fact that I think the struggle, right? Because I understand what she's saying. The fact that she felt relieved when this black man was seemingly doing nothing and he was arrested. But what everybody else didn't know was that he was harassing her. But that's not why he was getting arrested.
He was arrested for her.
That's not why he was arrested.
Right.
Yeah, and so I think it's just it's nuanced, because it's like that part is just not talked about. Do black women feel safe in the community?
Exactly.
I like that other part that has been now brought up, that I guess this is what you were saying also, Pamela. The songs are conversation starters, and they really have. But I never thought of these songs particularly as conversation starters. So, but I can appreciate certain songs, and so yes, to your point, certain songs have been conversation starters. But I get it. So I didn't think these, but I was like, oh yeah. So I can appreciate that too, and I think that's maybe how we layer into getting and being in community with some people. Maybe we don't always know how to break the ice. You heard that song? And that's why maybe WAP was such a big whatever, we had it way back in the day. Come again?
Dudes couldn't handle it. Some women didn't either, but men couldn't handle that one bit.
Gotcha.
Men was up in arms at these women being so explicit. These unmarriageable married women being explicit.
Another song I just thought of, which I definitely can say was a mantra for me. Salt and Pepper, Independent. I loved that song. And I really held on to that, being that independent song. And I mean, seriously, it's kind of crazy now that I think about it. There are parts of that, like, you know, living, I love that song. And I held that to such a high regard. So that was my challenge after being this. I was like, what song did I hold to a high regard or whatever? Salt and Pepper Independent. Loved, still do.
You held them to a high regard, but which songs did you feel like you adopted the values?
So that's one, independent. Oh, you mean within the book or just overall?
Yeah. Well, both.
So the book, I didn't, none of these songs did I. So
Well,
that's
reflect-
why I challenged myself to say, okay, I get where my sister's going. That's what's up. You know what I mean? And that's why I thought of some other songs that I really kind of, you know, held on to, that I say, oh, wow, you know, I really kind of embody this, or thought that much, or, you know, am I doing this? Am I wearing my hair because of this? Or, you know, those kinds of things. So, yeah, I did appreciate that. And music moves us. And, you know, I mean, whether you want to say hip hop 50 years or whatever, you know, I go back to some EWF. I go back to some, you know, Stevie Wonder, you know. So those songs, you know, move me. So that part.
Listen, I wrote an article about the fact that I'm amazed that I don't hate women, because I grew up listening to NWA and Dr. Dre. Those are my North Stars, 100%. That Niggas for Life was like my favorite album, and that joint is 100%. It's a bizarre ride to murder, rape, and mayhem of black women. I can't listen to it anymore. Like, I can't listen to the album because it's like either I'm too grown for it, or it's like, Jesus, this is it. Chuck D called it indefensible, and at one point I was like, dude, what you talking about? This is my jam. And then it's like, wow, this really is like, there's a song in that joint called Find 'Em, Fuck 'Em, and Flee. Right? Literally, that's the name of the song, and it's just about throwing women out of cars who ain't doing. A song called Automobile about rape. There's a song about statutory rape. There's like all these songs, and I'm just like, and so the point of the article I wrote, like, I'm going back, it was like celebrating, I think, like 30 years of the Chronic or something like that. Maybe this was even before, 25 years, something like that. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, man, my parents deserve way more praise than I give them for the fact that, like, I literally don't hold any of this stuff as a value system for who I am, because either I knew better or whatever. Like, I got it from somewhere, but that's all I used to listen to. Literally all I was listening to.
There is a pick and choose, and it's interesting. I cannot remember there was an IG post by Saul Williams that he recently did that to me was like the most beautiful. He did like 8 different posts of different Black art pieces, like song, dance, poetry, some talks or whatever, and it really got me thinking about the idea of Black arts, right? The Black arts movement, what it means. And I'm comfortable saying, as much as I love hip hop, as that was the soundtrack of my youth, that hip hop, there's a large swath of it that we just have to cut out, because it is.
It would be a big hole.
Right? Yeah. Because I think a lot of so when you say that, I never felt like, I knew that listening to this piece of it, I just hum it or just deal with the beat at that point. I cannot engage with the lyrics because this is not right.
No, I'm 13 years old when some of this stuff comes out, man. It sounds perfect to me at that age. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I'm 40. I mean, I'm 43. I'll be 44 in June.
Yeah, so I mean, my first introduction to hip hop was like nice and smooth and Young MC. So it was a little bit, small
in America too. So I am literally all the hip hop I'm getting is being imported, but I'm getting it through the tapes that my sisters get through her friends, because I'm in Germany at the time, right? So I'm not getting no Rap City. I'm not getting none of this stuff. So it seems like all the people that my sister got tapes from were all West Coast hip hop heads, and a lot of that stuff at that time was very. Like when it's like DJ Quick was like my favorite of all time, and and I mean I'm not gonna say it, but like the first record on Quick as the Name is Black P, right? And literally and it's profane, it's disgusting, and I loved it when I was 12 years old. I'm like, this is amazing. Bitch better have my money or songs that I love. I don't recognize that is indefensible at that time because it's taboo, and it's taboo to a bunch of 12-year-old boys who were like, yeah, we can say this stuff, and like, so it's like,
we had the labels on.
you know, until you get older and you have to interact with this stuff like academically, or like you have to genuinely think about it. You know, there's no reason to spend time thinking about that stuff until your parents hear it. Now, if you have parents that sit you down, like, what are you listening to? You know, but you know, I did.
Oh, for some people, like my tapes went through her. Like, Peaceful Journey was like one of her Heavy D. So it was being kind of censored to a point. So I get that, and I guess my bigger, broader point is that, you know, I think there is a conversation we have to have about our art form of hip hop, right? And how we take back control of it, because there is a bunch of it that is very toxic and destructive, right? So even for a 12-year-old, right? So that wasn't.
I had no business.
Right? Yeah, like that should not be a song that you're listening to.
I had an older sister, and I can still hear tapes.
Right, but that should not be that experience. So, you know, and that, you know, that speaks for variety in hip hop. Again, you know, like instead of just being this type of hip hop, there's space for Grand Poobah and Brand Nubians in hip hop, as well as, you know, the DJ Quicks and Snoops.
Yeah, but even they
real quick,
were homophobic.
y'all go back and forth.
So I feel like I'm the person that this book was written for. So I'm glad I walked in as she said who it was written for. I turned 37 today. So like I grew up as a hip hop kid, but my parents were really into religion. So it was like the opposite of them. So my music was not going through them. So, or it was what I thought it was. So like my first memory of like songs is Salt and Pepper Push It. And I was 4. And I had it in my Walkman as a tape. So my mom didn't know what was on there. So I was supposed to like fast forward to some songs, but I was 4. So like that's the impression. So then when I think of like, then I grew up on Lil' Kim, hardcore, and I was in elementary school singing Lil' Kim lyrics. So reading like Ride or Die came out in 99, I was in the 8th grade. So these are the songs that really shaped what we believed it was supposed to be. And it wasn't just you, it was me and all of my friends. So now we're getting to the age where it's like, this is not right. So for everyone on social media, a few years ago, it was a meme going around, everybody's saying that we riding or dying, where we riding to, why we riding. What we literally grew up as. So as we were starting our first relationships, that's what we thought it meant to be in a relationship. And it's interesting as I look back, because I grew up in a 2-parent religious household, so why didn't I follow that example versus the ride or die? But that is what.
That's the example, though.
That's
talking about you.
that's why I said I am the person the book is for, because outside of that, so that was the cool version. But then in my family, it was the woman fixes everything. That's our role. So now we're getting to a place where we have to unlearn that. So if no man ever reads this book is written for us to figure it out on our own, because the elders in my family, when I like challenge guys and their relationship in our family with women and their babies' moms and all of this, then we're going to battle with grandmoms, moms of like, no, that's wrong. He's not supposed to do anything. So it's not only the hip hop, it's also like the family structure of what it means to be a woman. So you have to like get through all of that every day. It's so hard. And I'm just getting to a place. It's funny. I just had this debate with one of my girlfriends this week. The Drake CD album that he came out with 21 Savage. I cannot listen to it.
Terrible.
I finally got to the place where I was just like, I can't do this anymore. She's like, but you listen to this and this and this, and you listen to Future all day. Why can't you listen to Drake? And I'm just like, because he thinks he's a nice guy, and I just can't. Like he thinks he's a nice guy. Future, you know what you're getting. Like, it feels like he tells you exactly what you're getting, and you can choose to participate. But Drake strikes me as like, I'm a nice guy. Like,
he acts like
we're gonna get married and live happily ever after. And then he making albums about like running through you, and I'm just like, I cannot do this anymore. So for this book to come out at that same time, it was just like, I am who she wrote this book for, because this is what we have lived, and now we have to figure out how to exist without these titles and without these capes. And we don't really know, and I can't speak for everyone, I don't really know who to look at as an example, because femininity from my elders is exactly what she's talking about. And then femininity from my peers is exactly what the songs are saying. So then you're like, well, what am I supposed to do?
Right. And I really appreciate that, because from the age and just like all of that just gives me a whole new appreciation for how this book can hit, because that is an experience that I just don't have. And that really speaks a lot. Like that's awesome.
So thanks for choosing for my birthday.
But I'm glad that was revealed. I will say this though. Back to these songs, particularly hip hop, that are really rough or toxic. I don't know if I really put so much weight in them. You know what I mean? The one song that I do actually have a moment where I was like, okay, I'm not dancing to in a club was I Need a Gangsta Bitch, right? By Apache. For some reason, I don't know where this level of consciousness decided to come up, but that song made me say, okay, well, I'll dance to everything else but that song. And I say that to say, I think we hear music because, you know, I remember the times when the Dolores C. Tuckers was like, we need to ban all of this. And I'm just like, wait up, you know, why are we going so hard? It's just music. What's the big deal? And I think I took the majority of hip hop like that. Where, yes, I heard it and I knew the songs. And when you mentioned the mom, because literally I lived in an apartment and I blessed my mother some days. I'm like, I don't know how, because I know I blasted that music intentionally and on purpose because I had to stay home. And so, whatever, you know, Friday Night DJ, whatever, all of that. And I heard it, but I don't know if I bled it in the sense of like, I took it, like I said, with the exception of that Independent probably, where I can say, okay, y'all really wanted that because those women to me kind of espouse that. But a lot of these songs, I was like, whatever. I remember Snoopy had a ball when, you know, Doggy Style came out and all of that stuff, and it ain't no fun. You know, come on. But we ain't take that literally. And I don't, and this is where I think, you know, and I'm not here to spew the generational wars, but when you take a lot of this stuff literally, whether it's TV or music and all of that, we enjoy that. A good time to go home and then you just whatever.
But I think even when you don't take things literally, repetition does matter. And it does impact your psyche and like how you interpret the world. Mm-hmm. So this is not a song, but I used to go to this church where women are in service to their husbands, right? Even in terms of like roles in the church, they're in service to the men. And I come to the church, and that's not my history, and that's not my work, and I'm outspoken. And so nobody was saying you shouldn't be like Zakiya directly. But the men treated me like I was rebellious and like I wasn't a person of interest. And they made comments to me and all of this. So it's not that the pastor from the pulpit was saying, women should not be leaders. Exactly. Sometimes it got pretty damn close, but the atmosphere that was created when you did not see other women like me leading and telling men what to do because it's my job or things like that made a hostile environment for me to be in this community that is touted as being like a family, right? It's not functioning as a family towards me. Because even in the language of the worship music, actually, at this church, women are in servitude to the success and flourishing of men, and that is godly, and that is righteous, and that is what's supposed to happen. And the women who are praised are women who are stay-at-home moms only. My mom was a stay-at-home mom part of the time, so I'm not that person who's going to say you shouldn't do that. But when those were the only women who were praised, it makes someone like me, a woman who at the time was in her mid-30s, now I'm 40, don't have children, don't have a husband, like, what the fuck is wrong with you is the energy. And so I think on the same notion, kind of what you were saying, like, where's the example? Even if people aren't explicitly saying you're wrong, and sometimes they will say that, but even when they're not, if women aren't talked about on the corner, if our reality isn't expressed, then there's no idea of what to do with us when we are suffering on the corner.
That's the book I want to read. That's not here.
I would add something to what you said about the music is not that, like, you all could listen to the song and go. So we also we also have the books. I was a bookworm. This book reminds me of the bookstore that used to be in Forestville Mall. So we also grew up on Zane books and hood novels. So Coldest Winter Ever, Zane telling you everything you're supposed to do.
Can somebody make a movie?
So when you look at everything we saw, that is what we were taught, that's what life is. So we saw it at home, we heard it in the music, we read it in the book. So there wasn't really another example. So it's just like, oh, this is what we're supposed to do.
I think there's a generational element to it too, because when we,
I will say that.
I'm sorry, let me add, there was another side, the really straight-laced church, but if it was like, if you don't want that, just the other option, like, you gonna go to the church boy, you're gonna go to the drug dealer. Like, it was literally like, those were kind of the options presented, and it's like, well, I know what the church looks like. I'm at home, so I don't want that. So let me try to try
today and all that. So you get more than just those two rows of who to be with. Now you have like
and then you come with, now we are the ones who are raising the next generation of men. So until we fix us, what we going, like, you know what I mean? So a lot of my peers have sons who have children now. So I'm saying they have 20-year-olds that they had in high school. So now they're teaching the next generation the same thing, because if we never fix ourselves, we're just continuing the same cycle.
I'm curious what your perspective was.
Oh, yeah, I would say there's a generational element too, because I grew up with Snoop, believe it or not, he's older than I am, and LL Cool J, PMG, all of that, Chuck D, but there was a counterbalance. You also had Babyface on all the time. You had old Motown songs, you had a lot of the love ballads. And then you had this other stuff. So it wasn't constantly you being hit with the misogynistic message.
I do appreciate that part. Thank you for saying that, because I do remember. Maybe that's also my part of how I listen to music. It was just Friday night DJ regular. Whereas most of it was your R&B, and my mother still has a plethora of music and records. So yeah, it was the soft R&B, it was that kind of stuff, and then Friday, maybe Saturday, got your hip hop going on, whatever. But and that's still how I even listen to it to this day. I don't really. Now that I got my new car, it's different. But I don't know where this all of a sudden. A certain car gonna make you wanna. You gotta tell everybody. But honestly, prior to though, for real, I don't really always listen to, hip hop or whatever, and I always forget church songs.
But now we have streaming where people can choose to only listen to Future
and
all
make
day
their own,
every
make their own
day.
playlist. You're right.
And now they're following Future's metrics, like, oh, well, Future's successful. He did this, and he's talking about doing this to women. So clearly, I need to follow. And F Sierra and F her husband, because he's a simp, like kind of mentality.
See, we didn't have the word simp back in the day. Come on, y'all.
Yeah. So
interestingly, before you get into that, I mean, what I will say is, as somebody with, so I have nephews that are 20, one of them just turned 21. Wow. Turned 21 and 24. And the music that they listen to, I talk to them about them, like, man, let me hear what you're listening to. Here's what I listen to at your age. Let me hear what they hate my music and I hate theirs. But I do listen because I want to understand. And I don't know if these boys just all depressed as hell. I don't know what it is. Like, I can't listen to it. It's all just really sad. Like, it just, all the music that every man is really hurt out here. They all seem like the most hurt dudes on the planet. Oh my God. Like, and I told him, like, yo, are you this depressed? Like, is this you? Like, but it's like the way that men did used to express themselves, now it's like we over-index. They overcorrected. Now it's the hoes all hurt my heart and I can't take it. They all gotta die now because I can't take the pain that they're bringing me. I mean, that's not a little bit. That might as well be right now.
understand it because like I'm used to like being super like the independent black woman, and it's almost like a movement now to be like I don't want to be the independent black woman anymore. Like I want a soft life.
Yeah.
So I feel like that is now like our undoing.
We just being extreme. We can't find the middle ground. Everybody's like, listen, you gotta ride and die, or you can't do nothing. It's like,
It's like where is the middle?
we can't find the middle. We can't find the middle.
Oh, here comes Derek.
I think that's what you were trying to say. Maybe that's what you were trying to say, but I don't think that's what you were saying.
I readily accept that, and because I'm honestly on a journey to figure out how to. The language is important, right? That's something that I've learned from my wife. How do I express it? How do I use the words that she understands in a way?
I said I want to sing in my flowers. Sounds like she's
The window was here.
Oh, yeah. So we had a free conversation, and she vetted my language. Like, okay, Derek. So I don't have. Language is important, and I think there is a conversation that needs to be had, and there's a conversation that we can have together, so that everyone's is seen and validated, and we're on the same team, and we are solution oriented in how we talk to the next generation on how I recognize your feelings and how you recognize my feelings. And I think there is validity in both sides of it, and we have to figure out how we have those complex conversations, right? So that we can actually bring down, because that's ultimately the goal. Like, keep talking about it doesn't do anything. We have to, at some point, figure out how to dismantle it so that in a generation, 2 generations, we aren't having the same that was scary. You said they talk about your friends who had kids when they were in their 20s and their sons are now 20. I'm like, oh shit, how are we gonna catch them? Like they're about to start, like they are out here dating now, like doing, so that scares the crap out of me. Like what the hell? You know what I'm saying? Like that's a real issue. Like,
and this is why we need better men podcasts to be not all men podcasts, but ones that actually are engaging.
I'm going to disrupt the manosphere. I'm coming. What you say my name was?
Kevin Samuelito.
Did you say Lito?
Kevin Samuelito.
Yeah. I'm gonna disrupt it. Okay. So this is an incredible conversation. Again, I'm very thankful to all you, everyone who came out watch, because again, the entire point is to have a conversation. And how do books change us? How do the words impact us individually and ultimately together? I mean, that's the whole idea behind books, community, words, and you. That these books can impact communities. These specific words in here mean something that touches individuals. And that's how we ultimately change and create that kind of revolution that we will see the change that we want to see. So I'm always appreciative of these conversations. Our next book, which I definitely have to read, since my
Yes,
home
I will be here. Which I also picked, but my bad.
Yeah.
Baby shower.
is South to America. You can skip it. Just send it.
Anyways.
Just send it. Was it Babies R Us? Is that still around? So it's going to be South to America. So our April book is South to America by Imani Perry. We're going to discuss it the first Friday in May, which is May 4th.
It's Cinco de Mayo, and that's why I'm really
Oh,
confused.
wow.
Because it's like
Oh, man.
tequila, bar crawl.
You know what? You gotta have margaritas. You gotta bring margaritas.
Okay, I'll be here then.
How did you not drink that? You don't even know what I feel over here.
So we're going to have a conversation about this afterwards. I can't put this out on the internet, but we're going to have it. Down, hold on.
Cinco de Mayo.
Yeah, we're going to do something. Yeah. I'm down. I'm going to visit. I know some black tequila brands. Yeah.
Oh, you're missing.
Oh, man. Oh. Okay, this is gonna be fun. All right. National Book Award winner, South to America by Imani Perry. Before we get out of here, I would like to have, especially when Panama picks it, I can have Panama say a little bit about it to kind of spice it up and let you guys know why this book was chosen.
Why did I choose this book? Well, one, because it's South to American, I'm a Southerner. And Imani Perry has written several books that are very highly vaunted, and everything I heard about this, and I have started to read about it, so I've read some of it, and I enjoyed it. But I'm like, I like the title. I like what it's supposed to be about, the soul of a nation. The title, I really like the title, actually. So I think that's probably what drew me into it. And I've read other books of hers, so yeah, I don't have nothing super deep about this one. No deeply personal connection.
So I'm gonna read the subtitle just because it's not South America. I just want to be very specific what I'm saying. It's South to America.
Right, that's fine.
A journey below the Mason-Dixon to understand the soul of a nation. So a nonfiction book. It was a National Book Award winner. So come on out, guys. We're gonna have some fun.
Right.
Go Cinco de Mayo, right? And we're going to have another lovely conversation, and we won't be there. And I won't.
I missed what the book was about.
We will. Yeah. So thanks everybody. We appreciate it. See you guys next time.
Yay!
Happy birthday!
Happy birthday!